Hey guys, for those of you who don't know me, Dave Sinclair. I'm the firefighter over here on Engine 66 on A shift, and this video is just to quickly go over the belt weather kit and how to take spot weather when on an incident and on the strike team or wherever necessary. As you guys know, drought conditions this year, coupled with our propensity for wildland fires here in Battalion 14, we stand the possibility of having a pretty busy fire season. And so at the request of Battalion Chief Hein, what we're going to be doing is in a rotation daily schedule, everyone taking turns, we're going to be doing, we're going to be slinging weather every day at 10 a.m. and 1600 or as close to that given call volume, and forwarding that information out to the battalion so everyone can be aware throughout the day in changing fire conditions. So that's the purpose of this video, is to go over the belt weather kit, all of its components, and quickly just show you how to sling weather real quick, record it, calculate relative humidity, and send that information out. Three of the most important weather factors are temperature, wind, and relative humidity, and all of those things can be obtained here with the belt weather kit. Typically how we get our weather in the morning, we turn on the news, we check the weather, get online, check the weather, or you're on an incident and strike team, you get an IAP that has the weather, but those are typically for greater regions. And so the good thing about the belt weather kit is it's going to give you exact weather conditions for the area you're operating in, coupled with the fuel that you're operating in and the exact conditions that you may have. Because as we know, with topography or microclimates, that weather conditions can vary, maybe not so drastically, but they can vary from location to location, even as little as a mile or two apart. So that's why it's really helpful to have this kit to go ahead and get our own weather whenever we want. Right here is a compass. Where everyone's seen a compass. Basically what we need that for is to determine wind direction. And of course wind direction is going to be the direction in which it's traveling. So if you're facing the wind, whichever direction the wind is traveling, where it's coming from is the actual wind direction. Here we have our psychrometer and slide rule, and with this we can determine dry bulb, wet bulb, and determine our relative humidity using two different ways actually. With that dry and wet bulb temperature, we can use the slide rule, or we have a chart here that we'll go over in a second. Here's the anemometer or wind meter. Holding this facing the wind will give you your wind speed. And then here is just a notepad, and I'll go ahead and open it up so you can see it. It has specific areas where you can record all the information that you're going to be obtaining with the belt weather kit. Because especially on strike teams, you're going to be doing this throughout the day, and typically a lot of times every 15 minutes, especially on red flag days or high fire danger areas, just to note any changes in conditions. So that's why they give you so many spots. But for us, it's probably just going to be 10 a.m., 1600, along with your date so you can see what the weather's doing. Here right is the water. This is what we're going to be using to wet the wick of the wet bulb thermometer, and that does not need to be any certain temperature, just whatever the ambient air temperature or wherever you store the weather. The belt weather kit is fine. This here is just a board for you to write on. If you're standing out in the vegetation, you don't have anything to write on or don't have anybody's back to put the paper on, you can use that. So real basic, down and dirty. So now we'll go ahead and just quickly go over how to sling weather. We're going to need the psychrometer, wind meter, water, compass, and of course, something to write on. When slinging your belt weather, you want to be in a location where the fuel is representative of the area that you're working in. Right now, as you can see, we just moved from concrete into a small fuel, but this small area is going to demonstrate similar conditions to where you want to sling weather. You want to be in the shade, and you want somewhat of some green fuel around you. and you want to be facing any wind that might be coming on. And you also want to make sure that you're in an area where the fuel is similar to the fuel that you're going to be working in. Like if you're on a big fire and you're in a timber fire, then you want an area that is similar to that. You don't want to find the one grassy patch when you're in a heavy timber fire. So that makes sense. So first of all, what we're going to do is go ahead and wet the wick of the wet bulb. Nothing crazy, just go ahead and get that wet. Now the reason why we wet the wick is because with a dry bulb and wet bulb, the evaporation that occurs from the moist wick on the wet bulb gives you a lower temperature. And so that's why they call it relative humidity, because it's going to be the difference between that dry bulb and that wet bulb that's going to give you your relative humidity. So we've wet the wick, and now what we're going to do is, facing the wind, we're going to sling it in a steady motion, approximately 25 to 30 seconds. Someone want to time me?
That's good.
Okay, now we're going to take a reading. Dry bulb is 72. Wet bulb 64. And you want to read that quickly because as this starts to evaporate, your temperature will increase and it won't be accurate. So, what did I say? 74, 72 and 64. So we'll go ahead and notate that.
This pencil.
Need a pencil. Or and we're not gonna do it right now, but we're gonna fill in date, location, and time, of course. And so we'll save relative humidity and go ahead and move on to wind. So first I'll take my compass. The wind is actually coming from the same direction where you're viewing me from, so it appears to be pretty much dead south wind. So go ahead and notate that. And then we'll take our wind meter. And we'll have you zoom in on the wind meter real quick here. As you can see, it's got two range, low range, high range, 0 to 10, and then 0 all the way up to approximately 70. That way, if you have a real mild wind, you can get a more accurate reading, less than 10 miles per hour. So again, facing the wind, holding it up. You're getting well, to be honest, we're getting no wind right now. So, but let's say, for demonstration's sake, we're getting a 4-mile-an-hour wind with gusts to 8. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and record that. And here under characteristics and comments, if there are any special conditions that need to be notated, like if you're not in the desired type of fuel, or if you're taking it in the black, or anything like that that might be outside of the ordinary, or anything that you want to trend as you go down. That way you can see if you have differences, you can see if there was any differences that affected your measurements, and go from there. So we have everything we need. Now we'll go over, using both methods, how to determine relative humidity. In case some of you don't know, is a percentage of the moisture in the air. Probably the most important factor when it comes to weather conditions and how they're going to affect fire behavior. So go ahead and zoom in. I'll show you we actually have two different methods in the belt weather kit for determining relative humidity. We have the slide rule that is always coupled up with the psychrometer, and then we also have a chart. Both of them use dry and wet bulb temperatures to calculate your relative humidity. And in our collective opinion, the chart is a more accurate way to determine your relative humidity because it's broken down by elevation, whereas opposed to the slide rule, it's not based on elevation, it's just one single measurement. So when doing your belt weather kit, let's go ahead and use the chart, and know that for some reason if in the field you lose your chart or you don't have a chart, or whatever happens, you have the slide rule as a backup to go ahead and get a pretty decently accurate determination of relative humidity. So with the psychrometer, you can zoom in a little bit. What we have is along here, top and bottom, dry bulb temperatures, and then the sliding part actually is your wet bulb temperature. So you go ahead, find your dry bulb, slide the wet bulb to go ahead and line up exactly, and then see. And then right here you will see it'll actually point to what your relative humidity is. There's little arrow points that point down or up, determining on where you're at. So, but basically we're going to be using the chart. So you can go ahead and zoom in on the chart. Based on the values that we got from Slinging Weather, on the left side here you can see we have the dry bulb temps, and along the top here are the wet bulb temps. And so another thing about the chart, it is based on elevation. Here in Rancho Cordova, we're at approximately 90 feet above sea level, and all the way out to Rancho Murrieta 59's area, upwards of 160. So relatively low elevation here. So we're going to be using the 0 to 500 chart. But if you're out on another incident, strike team, you can always obtain an IAP. Typically that'll give you your elevation, and then you can use the proper chart depending on your elevation. But for us here in B14, when you're doing your daily weather, we'll go ahead and use the back page, the 0 to 500 feet above sea level. So go ahead and zoom in one more time, and we'll go ahead, and a good accurate way to go ahead and do this is to use the slide rule and something else to go ahead and pinpoint your values. So using our dry wet bulb of 72, we'll come down here and find 72. Go ahead and slide the ruler up so we can see all the values going across at 72. And then come and find our wet bulb temp, which was 64. Slide that right up next to the 64. That right there. Okay, and so if you can zoom in on that at all, you'll see in that small box in the bottom right-hand corner, you have two values. Okay, the top number is your dew point, a little bit less important, but good to know. And the bottom number is what we're after. That's your relative humidity. So based on our dry and wet bulb temperatures, we have today a humidity of 65%. So humidity is still pretty high, but as the summer goes on, it gets hotter and drier. You're definitely going to see those RHs drop. So that's it. You record all your information, 10 a.m. and 1600 or as close to it, and go ahead and, as in an email, send that out to the battalion so everyone can be aware of what weather is going on that day, in our battalion specifically. And so, thank you for watching, and have a great day.